Welcome to Ilharg, the Raze-Boar. Hope you're excited to get some boar god in your life. That was a creature type that I didn't know I needed in my magic life, and here we are, and I feel very satisfied. So let's start off with Ilharg, the Raze-Boar himself, coming at 5 total converted mana cost. Trample, whenever Ilharg attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking, then return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. Whenever Ilharg dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, put him third from the top of your library. Now, there's one main thing you need to keep in mind in building your Ilharg deck is, one of the cool things is it's pretty much open. Whatever sort of creature deck you want to go for, you can go for tokens, you can go for direct damage entering the battlefield, you can go for utility. But there's one thing that you need to keep in mind is that you will not get creatures that have some sort of attack step trigger. So let's say that you want to run Eldrazi in your Ilharg deck, you will not get that Annihilator trigger because these creatures are already attacking. They're already in the attack line. They don't simply get to show up and do their little flavorful dance and say, hey, I'm attacking, this happens. Since they're already attacking, you're going to skip that step in a roundabout way. So long story short, this is your basic mono red ramp deck. Put a lot of big creatures in there, drop them really cheap with Ilharg. But you do want to keep that in mind that any sort of attack step triggers, you will miss out dropping them with Ilharg simply because they're already attacking. So that's something you need to keep in mind. But we're going to talk about different ways you can take advantage of enter the battlefield effects and making sure those creatures stay around. So let's kind of cover that a little bit later on in the deck tech. So let's go and start off with some of the really nice value creatures we can drop, and that's going to be dealing direct damage. I love these cards. Inferno Titan, Combustible Gearhulk. You're going to be able to drop both. Both of these creatures are 6/6s. You've got Combustible Gearhulk that's first strike. You get Inferno Titan that has that nice pump effect. Simply just dropping these onto the battlefield and getting that extra enter the battlefield trigger, 3 damage. You can send that up top to your opponent. You can clear the way with some of the creatures, or with Combustible Gearhulk, you can just get some really nice card advantage. Either way, you're going to have Ilharg swinging as a 6/6. You have these 6/6 creatures swinging across. I don't know, it's some really good stomping action. It makes Ilharg very happy. Now, as far as some of these creatures, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we have like 20 different creatures. Not in this deck tech, but at least 20 different creatures in the deck that care about dropping with Ilharg. So I'm going to just kind of try to hit them a little bit quickly. But long story short, with Inferno Titan and Combustible Gearhulk, these are going to give you some really nice damage whenever they enter the battlefield. Same thing with Fanatic of Mogus and Balefire Dragon. Fanatics can enter the battlefield. It's going to give us damage equal to Devotion to Red, which it's going to be pretty nice just to get that nice little incremental damage. And this is definitely one of those creatures that you kind of want to return back to your hand. You don't want to cheat that that trigger of keeping it on the battlefield. Being able to drop Fanatic of Mogus every single turn as it swings in, that's a really good way to kind of rack up some damage over the course of a game. And then Balefire Dragon. Now, this is technically not into the battlefield damage, but with Balefire Dragon, it's going to be a great way to swing in once you deal damage to your opponent. It's going to deal that much damage to each creature that opponent controls, which is really going to kind of clear the way for you to keep getting some of those really nice combat steps with this deck. Now, outside of dealing damage to our opponent or our opponent's creatures, we have some really nice removal creatures. That's going to be Meteor Golem and Steel Hellkite. Meteor Golem's got that superhero smash into the ground, love it. It's going to enter the battlefield, destroy target permanent. So if you're running something like Panharmonicon, that's double permanent destruction right there. And also, it's a 3/3, which is okay, but just having some sort of universal removal, simply just swinging with Ilharg is always great to have. And the same thing with Steel Hellkite. So whenever Steel Hellkite swings in, it's already going to be attacking, unless your opponent has some sort of creature with flying or some sort of creature with reach. You can be able to deal damage to them with Steel Hellkite, then go for that activated ability of just being able to destroy whatever you want. You're running a lot of artifact ramps in here, so being able to just kind of destroy target converted mana cost your opponent controls, that is a great way to kind of keep your opponent's board state in check. And also, same thing with Duplicate. You can just drop in Duplicate, exile that creature, and you're good to go. So kind of nice little bit of spot removal. Now, outside of the utility creatures dealing with permanents, we also have some really nice blocking creatures. So let's say that we swing in with Ilharg, we have a few other creatures. We drop in Thundermare. It's unaffected by summoning sickness, that is nice. But when it enters the battlefield, tap all other creatures. So since we are in our attack step right here, whenever we drop in Thundermare, that's going to tap all of our opponent's creatures. Then we go to our opponent's declare blocker step, and they're already tapped. So unless they have some sort of flash option after that trigger resolved, this is basically going to be a clear way for us to swing in and deal damage to our opponent. Now imagine that gets brought back to the hand. Next turn we go into swing, enters the battlefield, taps all the creatures down, go to the blocker step, they can't declare blocker. So that's a really good way to make sure you can just keep this kind of assault going against your opponent. And same thing with Breaker of Armies. All creatures able to block it do so. It is a 10/8, so it's a little bit more of a one-time use only. One also kind of depends on what sort of board state your opponent has developed, but at least having all of your creatures kind of lure onto Breaker of Armies, and I don't know, it's pretty flavorful to think about Ilharg running across the battlefield and you just drop in the Breaker of Armies and it just eats everybody up. But these are wonderful cards that can allow you to make sure you have the coast is clear whenever you decide to swing in and attack. Outside of those, we do have some really nice kind of steal effects that enter the battlefield. We have Zealous Conscripts. Now, unfortunately with Zealous Conscripts, if you gain control of an opponent's creature, you can't declare it attacker. It's already too late for that. But you can kind of use it as a pseudo kind of block effect. You can take a blocker away, one of their bigger creatures, or let's say you want to grab some sort of land, you need to grab your opponent's planeswalker to cast on the second main phase. Being able to just gain control of something that your opponent has on the side of the battlefield is always a nice effect, or simply just, you know, getting down Zealous Conscripts, gaining control of your ancient tomb, and then untapping it to get a little bit of extra mana for your second main phase. It's just nice to run something like Zealous Conscripts, especially if you're going to be able to keep bringing it back to your hand. Same thing with Direfleet Daredevil. You know, most of the time you're doing this during your main phase. You have the opportunity to flash this in during your combat steps. So you can cast target insert sorcery card. Doesn't matter what sort of mana requirements you have. You can cast with Direfleet Daredevil. Then you can, once again, you can bring it back to your hand at the end of the turn, keeping up that value. Now, outside of that, we do have some really nice kind of draw effects or attacking our opponent's hand. Mindclaw Shaman is one of my favorite cards in Commander. I love it. I don't get to play with it enough. Enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You get to cast an instant or sorcery card from them without paying its mana cost. And a little bit of a story real quick. So I was playing Grinzo, and I had Mindclaw Shaman and Grinzo, and I was playing against Riku. And my Riku opponent, I just blind fired Grinzo to bring a card off the bottom part of my deck, and we hit Mindclaw Shaman, and my opponent was playing Riku, and they had the, it's like 8 or 9 mana where they get to take 2 extra turns, so that felt really good. Anyway, that's what you can do with Mindclaw Shaman. You know, there's a lot of good stuff on the battlefield, and especially in your opponent's hands. So being able to cast an instant or sorcery whenever Mindclaw enters, and once again, bringing it back and getting it back onto the battlefield is a really good thing to do. Same thing with Sandstone Oracle. Most of the time, you're getting Ilharg down, there's a lot of stuff. You've depleted your hand. Your opponent's also depleted your hand. But if you're playing against an opponent that has a lot of card draw, simply just dropping in Sandstone Oracle is going to make sure you can keep your hand fresh and keep that same sort of card advantage your opponent's trying to generate. Now, outside of these creatures, of course you need to have really good creatures to enter the battlefield with Ilharg. You still want to have some sort of artifact ramp. That's going to be Soul Ring, that's going to be Mind Stone, that's going to be Worn Power Stone, Thran Dynamo, Gauntlet of Might. Whatever your artifact ramp is, you want to have a lot of it in your deck, because there's one of the ways that you can minimize the risk of Ilharg swinging in to get that combat damage, or at least get those drop the creatures on the battlefield, is if you just run a lot of ramp, you get to the point where you can just cast these creatures. You can just hard cast Inferno Titan, you can hard cast Balefire Dragon. So simply running a ton of artifact ramp in here really helps you, keep getting Ilharg back onto the battlefield, and at the same time, if they deal with it enough, get that commander tax, you can just start hard casting your creatures, and it's just kind of like a mono red, not necessarily Tron style deck, but you just want to get to as much mana as quickly as possible, because it just really helps you kind of minimize the risk of, let's say your opponent has a Maze of Ith or something like that, and you can't find any sort of land destruction. This is going to allow you to start casting some of your creatures and not having to bottleneck them through Ilharg's attack trigger. So it's just really good deck building to make sure you have a ton of ramp in here, because once you get past the 6, 7, 8 mana ramp, it's just hard for your opponent to stop you. The other thing that you definitely want to incorporate into your deck building is going to be some sort of haste option. Further, Hammer of Porphyros, there is no better feeling than getting to 5 mana, getting down Ilharg with Fervor or Hammer on the battlefield, and then swinging in, dropping an additional creature. That is some good magic. I love it. And also, same thing with Anger, the little angry guy in the cave. He is, look at him. He looks like a little angry guy. I know he's supposed to be bigger, but with the way the framing's done, or I guess the viewpoint, it just always reminds me of like a little guy that's like, he's going to come hit you in your kneecap. So anyway, run Kneecap Guy. You can get him into your graveyard. It's going to call all your creatures haste, and you can just really see him just whipping Ilharg to like on the back. Just go boy. Ogre Battle Driver. This is a wonderful commander card. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +2/+0 and gains haste. So even if you just have it down just to give Ilharg haste, it's going to be great. But it's still going to get some nice little incremental value whenever you drop your creature with Ilharg, because whenever a creature enters the battlefield, it gets +2/+0. So that's going to give your Inferno Titan a 6/6. 6, it's going to make it an 8/6. So it's going to be a really nice kind of way to make sure Ilharg has haste, and at the same time you can kind of pump up your board as you drop creatures onto the battlefield. The other thing that you can incorporate into your deck build is going to be some sort of kind of extra combat steps, because extra combat steps means extra creatures on the battlefield. So something like a Relentless Assault, untap all creatures. There's going to be an additional combat step. So that's going to keep that same creature on the battlefield, and then you get to drop a new creature. Same thing with Seize the Day. This is only going to be for Ilharg to untap it, but at 4 mana and then 7 mana or 3 mana out of the graveyard, this is a really good way to just get some creatures onto the battlefield really cheap. So Seize the Day, Relentless Assault, you can go wild with how many extra combat steps you would have put in there. I think I've only put 1 or 2 in here, simply because I don't like to run too many of them in there, but depending on how heavy you want to go into an extra combat step deck, it would be a lot of fun, depending on what sort of mana game you've got. Now, moving on to the utility cards. This is a deck that is wonderful for Conjurer's Closet and Panharmonicon. So we care about enter the battlefield effects. Panharmonicon is going to double those enter the battlefield effects, and then Conjurer's Closet is going to give us extra combat, not extra combat, but extra enter the battlefield effects. But the main thing that Conjurer's Closet does is it allows us to, at our end step, you're going to have the Ilharg trigger, and then you're going to have the Conjurer's Closet trigger. So what you can do is you put the Ilharg trigger on the stack first, put the Conjurer's Closet trigger on the stack. You're going to bounce that creature, and then you're going to have the Ilharg trigger on the stack, and that creature has already gone. So that way you're going to be able to keep that creature on the battlefield. Now, if it's something like Zealous Conscripts, you probably want to bring it back to your hand, so you'd put the triggers the other way. But this way, it's going to at least allow you to kind of keep something like an Inferno Titan on the battlefield, because once you bounce it with Conjurer's Closet, it is a brand new card according to the game. It's a brand new permanent. Ilharg doesn't care anymore. It's just, hey, we have a new Inferno Titan, buddy. Let's hang out and start dealing some damage. So that's one way that you can kind of combat that. And also something like, there's a couple of different cards that allow you to end the turn. They're not super wild about those, but you can certainly run them depending on your build. But Conjurer's Closet is definitely where it's at. And also something like Voyager Staff. That's going to be the same kind of Conjurer's Closet style effect. That's going to give you an extra into the battlefield trigger, and it's going to make sure that creature stays on the battlefield. So you're a little bit kind of hit or miss as far as being mono red and having some sort of exile effect. So I love Voyager Staff. I run it in my Gonti deck. Simply just getting it down for 1 mana, just having a 2 mana, bounce target creature. The fact that you can exile your opponent's creatures and it returns to the beginning of the next end step, so you can kind of fog out a really big creature for a combat step, or you can make it hard if you're going to swing with a bunch of creatures. This is a wonderful card. It's going to work out really well in your Ilharg deck, and you're going to find a lot of uses for it. And even something like Buried Ruin, if you want to keep bringing it back to go for those activations. Might be a little expensive, but hey, it's kind of worth it. Another thing that you can do is kind of capitalizing on that enter the battlefield. It's going to be Flame Shadow Conjuring and Electropotence. With Flame Shadow, we're going to be able to pay 1 red mana. It's going to be able to create a token that's a copy of that creature. And then Electropotence, it's going to give us the option of dealing damage for 3 mana. So let's say that we already got Ilharg down, we're swinging in. You don't really have to cast your big creature, so there's just sometimes where you have a lot of extra mana. So you get down Electropotence, have Inferno Titan in the battlefield, pay that 3 mana, you get to deal 6 damage target creature or player, and that is really good. You can run Pandemonium, you can run Warstorm Surge in here if you want to get some really nice into the battlefield effects to deal some damage. Pandemonium is 4 mana, and anybody can utilize Pandemonium at the battlefield. So if you're going to run it, I like running it in there, but sometimes you're going to catch some collateral damage. So something like Electropotence, it's going to keep that damage on your side of the battlefield and to kind of control who has access to it. And then, of course, Flame Shadow. Let's say that you imagine Flame Shadow and Inferno Titan. That's some extra damage. You love it. Some other really good cards that kind of help us push our game plan: Sneak Attack and Seething Song. Sneak Attack is kind of like plan B for the deck. We can get this down, we can go for these creatures. It does sacrifice the creature, but I can talk about a way that we can utilize sacrificing those creatures. Seething Song is a wonderful thing. You get to turn 3, you at least get to 3 mana, drop in Seething Song, drop in Ilharg, and your opponent's like, uh-oh, we have a Boar God on the battlefield. Highly recommend Seething Song. It just ends up some really explosive games, and it basically just kind of puts your opponent back a turn, because once you get down Ilharg, you're going to start swinging in. So unless they have some sort of spot removal, that's going to basically, they're playing from behind the rest of the game as you keep swinging, you keep getting creatures onto the battlefield. battlefield. So don't skip on something like Seething Song. It's really good. Now with Sneak Attack, you do have to sacrifice the creatures. There's a couple different ways we can take advantage of that. Feldon and Duretti, they care about having cards in the graveyard. So Feldon, you know, let's say we sacrifice a creature with Sneak Attack, we can use Feldon to bring that card back out on the battlefield. That's going to be another, you know, the battlefield style effect. Same thing with Duretti, we can discard cards and discard those. Basically, you just want to have as much overlapping value as possible. Think of it kind of like a circle in the ecosystem. So we have Ilharg dropping creatures. If something happens to it, it goes to the graveyard. We've got Feldon, we can bring it back. Duretti's going to be able to discard cards. So basically, you just kind of create this loop from Ilharg dropping, battlefield, graveyard, bringing them back. And then at the same time, you're still incorporating Panharmonicon in there to really get some really nice into the battlefield effects here. You're just creating this kind of circle of just overlapping like game plans, and that really helps make sure that your deck is going to be really solid. Outside of those, you know, of course, if we're running Feldon and Duretti, you want to have some sort of red card advantage. So Faithless Looting and Tormenting Voices are going to allow us to draw cards and discard cards. We get rid of stuff that we don't need. We can dump some really big creatures for Feldon. Whatever you need to do is going to be access to it. And also something like Wheel of Fortune. You know, there's a lot of times where we dump a ton of mana onto the battlefield. We get our mana rocks down, we get Feldon down, then we're just basically sitting at 1 or 2 cards in our hand with Ilharg. Wheel of Fortune is a wonderful way to make sure you have some sort of nice creature to drop with Ilharg once he's on the battlefield. Now that does give your opponent some extra cards, but you're mono red. You want to close the game out as quickly as possible and be as aggressive as possible. So Wheel of Fortune definitely kind of helps you go for that game plan. Now, one of the last things that you definitely want to incorporate into your deck building is making sure that the board is clear. The last thing you want to do is lose your Boar God to a bunch of little mana dorks and mana elves. So running stuff like Pyroclasm, Anger of the Gods, this is really going to clear a lot of those little creatures on the battlefield and make sure that they just don't get in the way. You know, you want to force your opponent to make some blocks that are just, if they're going to block, they're not going to be that good, especially with Ilharg. He already has Trample. So you don't want to end up with a bunch of little 2/2s that can stop Ilharg. Once you go for something like Anger of the Gods, Pyroclasm, that should clear the way for Ilharg to come stomping across and drop whatever sort of creature. You can also run a little bit more of a bigger damage style effect, Mizzium Mortars and Hour of Devastation. Those are going to make sure that your bigger creatures still stay on the battlefield. Now, let's say that you end up going Mizzium Mortars in your first combat, your first main phase. That does put the damage on the Ilharg, but at least you're going to have Ilharg stick around to still get that extra combat trigger, dropping a creature down. And that is going to be it for the deck tech. I have some awesome gameplay videos for you up next, so make sure you stick around and watch. Welcome to Ilharg, the Raze-Boar. As far as opening hand goes, yes, I love it. We're going to keep on this one. This is pretty much everything we want to see. We've got 4 mountains. We've got a haste option for Ilharg to come down. We don't have a big creature, but thankfully, hopefully we can go for Hammer of Proforos and get down Conjurer's Closet and drop in some really nice, Thundermare. That is a wonderful thing to draw. So let's go Mountain, and then anything else, we're going to go and pass the turn to our opponent. So we're playing Ilharg, the Raze-Boar. Just look at that art. That is so good looking. I love it. And when I was doing the art for this thumbnail, it kind of has this old school magic look to it. Like, I don't know, it just looks good. It is, I really enjoyed it. So I'm probably going to go for Demonic Tutor. Trample, whenever Ilharg attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. Then, whenever Ilharg dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, put it into his owner's library, 3rd from the top. Playing against Ant Goblin over there, and we'll go for Mountain. Then anything else, we're going to go and pass the turn. So playing against Wart, Fear, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target Goblin card from your graveyard to your hand. So we'll see what our opponent ends up grabbing off of that Demonic Tutor. And excuse me just a second, my production assistant is signaling for me to, you may have just heard her meow right there. My production assistant signaled for me to pick her up. So usually when she wants me to pick her up, she'll just stand right by my monitor and look at me and be like, "Did you not get my cat memo? I want to sit in your lap." So she's in my lap right now, and I'm giving her a nice little head rub. We did cover both commanders, so it is officially free time. We can have some fun. I'm really excited about Ilharg. Now, this is the actual first game that I'm playing with, so hopefully you end up with a pretty good video. The core concept of the deck, you know, we do have the deck tech at the beginning of this video, but if you skipped ahead, the core concept of the deck is to get down Ilharg, just kind of drop in some really nice value creatures, you know. At the end of the day, when you have a really strong commander like Ilharg, let's say that you, what does Goblin Recruiter do? Enters the battlefield, any number of Goblin cards, and then put them on top in any order. And so that's going to be, okay, got 5 Goblins coming across next turn. or at least we know what they're drawing into. We go Mountain. Let's go Hammer of Proforos. Do we want to just kind of preemptive will? Nah, yeah, I'm kind of fine with going for this. Let's go Hammer of Proforos. We'll get that down, and then we'll go and pass the turn over our opponent. But yeah, with Ilharg, this is one of those commanders that it's very clear that we are going to get rewarded for attacking with Ilharg. And forgive me if I'm saying that wrong. I am pretty sure that's how you pronounce it, so it's going to be how for the rest of the video. But you're going to be rewarded for attacking with them. So one of the ways you can kind of help minimize the risk in your deck and not just kind of losing to some good spot removal is just kind of building this artifact deck. We're going to get a lot of mana going, and those creatures that we'd normally be dumping with Ilharg, we can just cast them at late point in the game. And so we can use Ilharg as an early haste option threat with something like Hammer of Proforos, or we can just drop in some creatures, which is always good. Enters the battlefield, reveal the top 4 cards. Oh, that's pretty sweet. Okay, I get that now. So they stack the top of their library, Goblin Recruiter, then they go for Ringleader, and just dump everything into the graveyard. Into their hands. So that was pretty cool. All right, so they're going to swing it for 2. That will end up knocking us down to 28. And a Goblin Surgeon, or Churgeon, however you say that, I've always appreciated this kind of like old school art, especially if you're new to Magic. A lot of these old Magic cards just have some very, very bizarre art. Now, with their opponent having all of those goblins in the hand, I'm almost tempted to just straight up go for Wheel of Fortune. I think that'd be a good way to, Sting Scow or Goblin War Chief. Yeah, let's go for Wheel of Fortune. That's at least going to discard all those goblins that they put on top. And we might end up getting a little bit of extra, some sort of man. Ooh, this is beautiful. I love it. So we get all those goblins to go back into the graveyard. That does give them a fresh grip. Anything else, we're going to kick it over to our opponent. So we did run into Myriad Landscape. We have 2 more mountains, and we do have Sad Robot. So if our opponent's going to be, they're not up to a crazy start. We're not playing against Krenko or anything like that, where the goblins are coming down pretty like rain. We do have Goblin War Chief is in the graveyard, so thankfully we dodged that one, because typically when you're playing against goblins, if they can get down some sort of Goblin Lord, some sort of haste option, that's really hard to kind of combat. So I would have liked to hold on to Conjurer's Closet, but I was fine with going for this because that kind of shook her hand up a little bit. And there's a lot of artifacts in here. If we can find stuff like Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, that really kind of pumps out the Ilharg plan. And now we have a really nice assortment of creatures. We have Demanding Dragon, Inferno Titan. And like I mentioned in the video, we can, basically we're at 4 or 5. We can just start hard casting some of these creatures and not necessarily have to worry about Ilharg. But it is nice to get an extra just value creature right off the top. So I think we might want to just go ahead and drop in Inferno Titan. I think that'll be pretty good. Oh. Or we run into Pyroclasm. Let's see. So there's not going to be really any... Yeah, let's just go Ilharg. I think I like that. We can hold on to Pyroclasm in case something gets a little nutty. I guess an argument could be made that we should probably go for it now, just to, if they get 2 lords on the battlefield. But, yes, we definitely, let's put, always yield to that trigger. And then let's dump in Inferno Titan. Oh, Inferno Titan's mad. Heard there's some Gerblins hanging around somewhere. And 1 more damage. We don't have to worry about a hasty 2/2. That's going to get rid of that one. And we'll spread it atop. So that's going to, that looks pretty good. So that's going to get rid of those 3 creatures. Inferno Titan's going to come in. That's going to be 12 damage we're going to deal to our opponent. So look at that. Off to a beautiful start. Put them down to 27. With that 1 damage trigger, and then we're going to knock them down with 6 damage, put them all the way down to 15, and that will end up being 6 total commander damage. So anything else, we're going to go and pass the turn to our opponent. Now, I did mention in the deck tech, one of the things that we are running in this deck is that you want to kind of have some sort of, just clear the ground so that way Ilharg can swing in. He's a big boar. He's got a really nice green coat. The last thing you want is to do is get that coat dirty with a bunch of ground creatures. So running effects like Pyroclasm, especially if you're building kind of like a heavy artifact style deck, that really just kind of clears the way. It makes it, or there's even sometimes to where, let's say they do need to block with a bunch of creatures to get rid of Ilharg, we can basically just end up going for Pyroclasm main phase, and it's going to make it a little bit harder for them to kind of end up with some pretty good blocks. But at this point right now, we've got a good crew assembled. So let's go and drop in Mountain. And all of our creatures have haste. So I think at this point, we go Demanding Dragon. Oh yeah, look at this. Love it. Demanding Dragon. And that's the other cool thing is you just run some really nice sweet spot into the battlefield effects in this deck, and you are good to go. So we're going to drop in Demanding Dragon. Enters the battlefield, deals 5 damage to target opponent unless they sacrifice a creature. So that's going to be 5 up top. That's going to be Ilharg for 2. And then that'll also be Inferno Titan dropping in. I think that's the... At this point, that's going to be 5/10 in the air. We might end up just going Thundermaw Hellkite. Because they're not gonna be able to stop that. And I was thinking about, I always get really hung up on getting down Inferno Titan as many times that I can, but Thundermaw might end up being kind of the better option for us. So they're gonna go for Chaos Warp. Yep, that's fine. Let's see if we get lucky. Let's keep our fingers. The Steel Hellkite. Alright, so we're gonna go and push in. And see, that's one of the good things about this deck is running a lot of big creatures, and then just sometimes you just get lucky off a Chaos Warp like that. That does send Ilharg back to the command zone. We did we did make the land drop for the turn, and we'll go and pass the turn. So, got our opponent against the wall on this one. We've got, we could, oh dang, no, excuse me, we could not have gone for the Steel Hellkite activation because that would have been 2 mana, so we only had 1 mana. But you can see just getting down a haste option and getting down Ilharg and dropping it in. And this is one of those commanders that, you know, you look at the green main on it, and you think this would be so good red-green, and I have to imagine that this creature started out red-green in some form or fashion, just based purely on the art. But if you imagine this as being a red-green commander, I just feel that it is just way... I mean, there's just so many good creatures you can drop into Ilharg. When you have to build this mono red deck with Enter the Battlefield effects, you kind of have these weird effects you have to work at Patriarch's bidding. Okay, so we just got hit by a bus, like a public bus on the road, a Bajuka Bog into Patriarch's bidding. We're going to name Dragon, but that's not going to bring anything back. Oh, goodness. Okay. Now, they are at 5 life, and we are at 23, and I do not think they have lethal. That's going to be 5, 9, 10, 11. That's going to be 13, 16... 17. Oh no. Oh no, we're at 23. Okay, that's okay. Alright, so they're gonna have Goblin I think either way, we just get down Myriad Land. Oh, excuse me, it's gonna hit the battlefield tapped. So since they are sitting at 5, we basically just go Thundermaw Hellkite, and that should be good. Because they're bouncing that back with Stings. Yeah. And they're looking to search for some goblins, but I think this is going to get it done, so we'll kind of see. But yeah, you know, what I was mentioning was, you know, you need to build a mono red deck that cares about the battlefield effects. You kind of get a little creative in your deck building. Now, I'm not running any Eldrazi in here. I'm just not a huge fan of Eldrazi to begin with, and you can certainly run in your Ilharg deck, but it doesn't get that Annihilator trigger, so that's something you want to keep in mind in building your deck, is that you will not get that Annihilator trigger because it's already attacking, so that puts us all the way down to 3. Oh, I was about to say, if our opponent has a Lightning Bolt that they're just sitting on. Alright, so we go Myriad Landscape, enters a battlefield tap. Let's go Thundermaw Hellkite. Now, if they've got some sort of, who knows, bounce something back, it's going to deal 1 damage to each creature with flying, but there's a bunch of Gerblins. There's no wings over there, so let's go and push in. You can definitely see, if you know, I'm very aggressive with Ancient Tomb sometimes. If we had gotten an Ancient Tomb down, it would have been a little bit of bad news bears for us. So we're going to be able to close it out. Good game by our opponent. You can see where Patriarch's bidding. They got a lot of goblins. We were able to close this one out because next turn we are definitely dead on board. But then again, we still have Pyroclasm, and maybe we get lucky and run at another damage source. But they pretty much could be able to kind of stop a Pyroclasm for the most part. At least would have stopped them down just a little. That'll get rid of the tribal effect, and then that should have cleaned everybody up. So we still kind of had Pyroclasm just do a little bit of cleanup duty. But if you enjoyed your time with Ilharg, like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye. Welcome to Ilharg. As far as our opening hand goes, we have Valakut and Shinka. Yeah, we'll keep on this one. I like this. It's not too bad. You know, it's not enough to ship it away. If we needed to be a little bit more aggressive, we could. But we've got 3 lands. We have an Enter the Battlefield style effect. We've got some board control and Pyroclasm. And we have a Worn Power Stone to get a little bit of some of that ramp going, which this deck certainly does. So we'll not ship this one back. Oh, no, 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 no. Uh-oh. Okay, we're jamming F3. What ended up happening... Okay, sometimes... Okay, whew, thank you. Thanks to our opponent. Sometimes on Magic Online, let's enter the battlefield with Valakut, and whew, anything else, we're going to go and pass the turn to our opponent. So let me kind of explain what happened really quick. F6, or the number 6 button, is the hotkey on Magic Online to just yield until my turn. Like, I have nothing to do, just pass the turn. And I use that key a lot because, you know, I'm reading commanders, I'm talking about strategy. If we tapped out on mana, there's no reason that I need to leave it up. And so there's sometimes where if you just go to hit F6 and it's at the same time your opponent passes the turn, it just automatically almost yields to your turn. So when you hear me kind of like do that really quick, and I'm like, it's funny because if you had a camera on me, you would see me. I'm jamming the F3 is the cancel button, and so I'm just jamming that. Do we want to go for Pyroclasm to give it a Deathrite Shaman and Deathrite Shaman only? Is that what we want to do? We've already made the land drop for the turn. Yeah, because if they get... Well, let's see if... They don't have any lands in the graveyard, so I think we're okay. Actually, yeah, let's go and go Pyroclasm. I've got a lot of respect for Deathrite Shaman. If they somehow run fetch land into that and get Marin down, I just kind of like... at least kind of keeping Deathrite Shaman in check. But yeah, long story short, whenever I hit the yield button and I need to frantically hit it, I'm just like jamming the F3 button as many times as possible. So if you had a camera on me, that's what you would see. But let's cover the commander. So we're playing Ilharg, the Raze-Boar. Trample, whenever Ilharg attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Return that creature to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. And, ooh, Wormcoil Engine. So I was just about to say we don't have a good drop option for Ilharg, but I kind of like what we got going on. I think at this point, so we can go Warren Pit. Yeah, I kind of like just getting in our opponent's face on this. So let's just go Seething Song. And this, typically a Seething Song, you do see it in a lot of Storm decks, but, you know, turn 3, 5 mana, we're looking at Ilharg coming down pretty quick. I like it. And then we can start going for Wormcoil Engine. Drop that in, get that really nice Death Touch and Lifelink, and hopefully start putting some pretty good pressure on our opponent. So whenever Ilharg attacks, you get to put a creature onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Now, just a quick reminder, if you're looking to build Ilharg, that does not get any sort of when this creature attacks style effects. You know, it may seem like it would do that, but since that creature is already tapped and attacking, they've skipped that step. So let's say you wanted to build an Eldrazi deck with the Boar God. Sounds pretty cool to have Eldrazi and a big boar running with them. But all right, so opponent's gonna catch us off for a fast start with Water and Blood. But long story short, you don't get those attack step triggers, you know, that whenever they attack, because it's already on the battlefield. So where the money is out for Ilharg is the enter the battlefield effects, because you can, you know, either way they're going to be entering the battlefield. That's what you can go for. Now, opponent ends up going for Barter and Blood, which, you know, that's going to reset the clock on Marin. It's going to reset the clock on Ilharg, so we can make use of that. Let's go Shinka. You know, I think we need to start ramping at this point, because what this deck wants to do is, you know, if we can drop a creature with Ilharg down, that's awesome. We definitely want to do that. But if we can't, you know, we're at the point now where we can just hardcast Wormcoil Engine and just start going to town. And then if something ends up happening to Feldon, not Feldon, if something ends up happening to Wormcoil Engine, we go for Feldon. And I will tell you something, Feldon and Wormcoil Engine, they're like best buddies. Go for the 3-mana activation, create a token that's a copy of target creature in your graveyard, then sack it at the beginning of the next end step. So once we get Wormcoil into the graveyard, we sacrifice it to Feldon activation, and we get those tokens. It is just, oh, it's some good magic. In fact, if we want to end up going for that, we could just dump Wormcoil Engine right now. But I kind of like the pressure Wormcoil is going to produce for us. So you know what? Let's, I think at this point, we'll get rid of Relentless. No, actually, let's get rid of Flame Shadow Conjuring. Yeah, we'll click OK on that, because Relentless is solid. If we end up with Wormcoil and a copy of it, and that'll be pretty hard for our opponent to kind of stop that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're 1 away from actually going for Ilharg. So I think at this point, we have enough for Wormcoil Engine. Yeah, let's just go, because that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can end up going, we can't actually just get down, I was thinking about Sad Robot and somebody else, but that's going to be 7 mana. Yeah, let's go Wormcoil Engine. If something ends up happening to Wormcoil Engine, we at least end up getting those tokens down on the battlefield, and that's going to be a great way for us to really start putting some pressure on Liliana. And this is, yeah, the Liliana healer too, so at this point, we've got the Wormcoil Engine. Unfortunately, does not have Death Touch, but if they want to throw the zombie in front of Liliana, they certainly can. And if we want to, we can basically just start attacking our opponent's life total, swinging with the Wormcoil Engine. So We'll kind of see what we want to get going for next turn. Might end up going, if we don't hit the land drop, we'll certainly end up going for Sad Robot, and that'll at least give us the land drop. And then once keeping on theme, you know, even something with Ilharg, dropping in Sad Robot with the Victimize, okay, even dropping in something like Sad Robot with some sort of enter the battlefield amplifying effect, or just going for a value play, I don't know, always feels pretty good. So opponent's going to go for a Liliana activation, discarding a card. Yeah, I guess we'll get rid of Relentless Assault, because if we do end up hitting the land, then we can at least drop both of those creatures down, or end up going for Ilharg. And they're simply just going to pass with no cards in hand. And so what we can do is at least kind of take, and run into Mana Crypt too. So let's go Mana Crypt. Yeah, because we want to take care of Liliana if possible. That's going to force them, they can still end up going for the discard action. So I think at this point, we just need to get as many creatures on the battlefield. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's going to be 8 total mana. And then Ilharg with Trample next turn should be able to do cleanup duty. So I think I like this. So let's go and push in with Wurmcoil Engine on Liliana. That's going to knock him down to 1. And you know what? Yeah, let's just go Ilharg, because I really do like that Trample effect. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, then 1, 2, and then 1 more. Okay, so we're going to get down Ilharg, and then anything else, we're going to go and pass the turn over to our opponent. So, but yeah, you know, just swinging in next turn for a 6/6 with Trample. I can't really see them building up enough of a creature board, especially only having 1 card in the hand, and they're kind of in top deck mode right now. Even if they get down Marin, that's going to be a big chunk of their turn, because that's going to be 6 total mana, and so that's going to be a 3/4, and we should be able to get in with Wurmcoil Engine. Or with Ilharg having that trample. So at this point right now, yeah, I guess we get rid of Feldon. Yeah, I think that's okay. So we get rid of Feldon, because we can drop in Sad Robot next turn. If we had just a few more, like a little bit of a better creature option out of the graveyard, I would go for that. But if we just get down Feldon and then go for some sort of spot removal, going to be in a really bad spot. So yeah, I kind of like going Sad Robot next turn, just to at least kind of have some sort of option to swing in at Liliana and start to cash in some cards on our. We do see Izoni in the graveyard off of that discard, so thankfully at this point there's not too many creatures in there for them to get a ton of insect tokens, and we can just hopefully just kind of power and destroy with Ilharg as they swing across. So let's see, I think they have no counters on there right now. Okay, so we get the Mana Crypt trigger. Let's go and choose Tails on this one. Lost the flip, 0 for 1 on our Mana Crypt triggers, and then we run into Conjurer's Closet, which is actually going to be, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so we can actually go Conjurer's Closet, 1, 2, 3, 4. And what this ends up doing with Conjurer's Closet is it kind of gets around that bring it back to our hand style effect. So let's go and push in with Ilharg and Wurmcoil Engine. Now, what they can do is they can declare a Tri-Builder or a blocker on one of these creatures, and so we'll see how they decide to go for that. We're going to go for, I think we really need to deal with Liliana at this point. Yeah, let's go and do that. So we're going to drop in Sad Robot, and let's still go ahead and swing it in at Liliana. That way we just kind of force the issue. Okay, so we're going to do the battlefield. We're going to be able to search our library for a forest. Now, for a mountain. Now, depending how they decide to block, we still have the first strike from Shinka that we want to keep in mind. So no matter what they end up going for, we should be able to clean it up with Ilharg, and that trample should make sure that she goes back into the graveyard. But I'm sure Liliana would enjoy hanging out in the graveyard. Okay, so Mare's going to block on Sad Robot. We get to cash in a card draw, and let's see what we run into off. Yes, definitely want to use that ability. Ooh, Steel Hellkite. That is very wonderful. And I guess at this point, we just drop in Wurmcoil Engine, because that's going to allow us to... Yeah, so we drop in Wurmcoil Engine, because that's going to allow us to give a blocker on the battlefield that's untapped. Yes, definitely want to use that ability. No enter the battlefield effects, but just simply having a 6/6 Death Touch with Lifelink against Deathrite Shaman and Tri-Builder and Marin, we can definitely get some good stuff done. Now, the one thing that we do want to watch out for is, thankfully, our opponent is not running any sort of not counter magic, but some sort of tutor spell, is if they get Spore Frog down, that is going to be really, really hard for us to beat Spore Frog. That is definitely not a good card for this deck. There's a lot of, being able to fog out a combat step like that is not good. All right, so opponent's going to go for Flesh Bag, and I think we just sack Yeah, we just sack Wormcoil Engine on that. That's going to give us a couple more tokens. That does allow them to bring back Fleshback Marauder with their trigger. Bring it back to the battlefield. So that will be hard for us. But if we can start to build up some of these worm tokens, you know, that'll be some sort of sacrifice effect that we can hopefully kind of combat Marin. And they're going to go for Excavator. You may play lands from your graveyard. And they have no lands in the graveyard either, so that is okay. Now they can start to bring Tri-Builder back to the battlefield, which kind of does complicate us swinging in. You know, if we swing it with the token, they can sack it and kind of fog out that damage. But thankfully with Ilharg, we can at least kind of push in with some combat damage. So let's see. Let's go and choose Tails on this Mana Crypt trigger. 1 to flip on that. 1 for 2 in our Mana Crypt triggers, and we run into Hammer of Proforos. Okay, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We actually have just enough mana to tap out for all of it, but with Conjurer's Closet, we can just get around that. So let's just drop in Hammer of Proforos. We're still going to leave up that red mana to go for that first strike activation, and they'll be able to drop in Steel Hellkite and just really kind of wreck our opponent's board. Yeah, we've got the mana for it, so let's go and push in. Swing it with the entire crew so we can still go for the first strike and then still have up to 4 mana for the activation. So yes, we're going to drop in Steel Hellkite, and that's going to be 6 coming across with Trample. We can give Ilharg first strike or simply just give Death Touch first strike, and that's a, target legendary creature. So we're only looking at Ilharg getting that first strike, but there's no creatures in the air that can stop Hellkite from coming down. And at this point, they've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. So unfortunately with Hellkite, with converted mana cost X. So I guess what we can do, yeah, I kind of like, because we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so they're going to exile Wormcoil Engine out of our graveyard. They're going to get an experience counter, and then we're going to go for the 4 activation. Well, let's make sure that we're not in some weird like first strike step or something like that. That would be very bad. I'm pretty sure this damage is already done since those creatures have died. But let's go and go for the activation now. We're going to tap that for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's going to get rid of Marin and kind of force him to go for that recast. And they're going to get another experience counter once they end up sacking Secure Tri-Builder, and that will end up getting rid of Marin. Now what we can end up doing is we're going to be able to bounce Steel Hellkite with Conjurer's Closet to get around this Ilharg trigger. So we're going to be able to see that. So let's put the Ilharg trigger on the stack first. Then we go Conjurer's Closet on Steel Hellkite. Now once this enters the battlefield after Conjurer's Closet trigger, it's a brand new creature. So Ilharg doesn't care. He's like, hey, well, that creature that I originally brought out is not here anymore. That's the only creature I care about. So we have a 5/5 flyer in the air now that hopefully can just really do some good cleanup duty. The only thing is, if our opponent ends up going for Marin, they've got the experience counters for Fleshback Marauder. But thankfully with Hammer of Proforos, we still have that kind of haste option to kind of make it a little bit hard. What would be really nice if we can get it drawn to one of our bigger creatures to drop it in with Ilharg, especially if it does have haste. But let's see how our opponent decides to roll out this turn. Oh no. Alright, so we're going to see Terastodon come down. Enters the battlefield, destroy up to target 3 non-creature permanents. So that's probably going to be Conjurer's Closet, Hammer of Proforos, and your Worn Power Stone. Yes, very good options. But at least at this point, we can still swing in with the Steel Hellkite. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're actually 1 mana away. So let's see if we hit the land drop for the turn. We've still got some elephants, which we'll definitely take on that. Let's go Tails on this Mana Crypt trigger. 1 to flip, 2 for 3 on our Mana Crypt trigger. And did we hit the land? Oh, Ogre Battle Driver, which does not have haste, but I really like just pushing in on this one. And let me just make sure we're looking at this right. So it's going to be 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're still 1 away. So let's go and swing in. And at this point, we just really want to attack our opponent's life total. We could even almost, yeah, I just like getting in for a big chunk of damage. Because at this point right now, we're going to be in a top deck war. So we might as well just, yeah, so let's go and go for Ogre Battle. Well, do you want to have that for a haste option next turn? I think I like this. So we're just going to click OK. We're not going to drop a creature, and we're going to go for Ogre Battle Driver because that puts us in a position to where next turn we can get the haste option and just kind of make it a little bit complicated for our opponent to block. So, and then let's go and go Ogre Battle Driver. And that'll just basically at this point just be another body on the battlefield. You know, if our opponent's going to end up going for Fleshback Marauder or something like that. Ilharg should be 7 mana, which is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that should be just enough. And depending on what they draw into, we should be able to hopefully keep our fingers crossed, closed it out. But also, I'd like to talk about Ogre Battle Driver, how good this card is. If you're running any sort of mid-range deck, when you have Ogre Battle Driver, simply giving your creatures +2/+0 and giving them haste is one of the best things you can do in Magic. It is just a really good card. I run it in my Omnath deck. So if you're looking kind of for a new card to play or kind of slot into some of your decks, I highly recommend Ogre Battle Driver. It's one of the cards in Commander that you don't hear enough about, but it does a lot of good things. Alright, so opponent's going to scoop it up on this one. Thankfully, our opponent ended up going for Terastodon. That gave us an entire elephant army, which you can imagine that probably made Ilharg pretty happy. But that's going to be it for the video. In fact, if you enjoyed the videos, like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.